They're the largest cat species out there, and they're absolutely beautiful. But make no mistake, tigers are deadly, no matter whether they're born out in the wild, where their numbers are rapidly dwindling, or in captivity. These mighty animals are not pets. Given the right opportunity, they can kill humans in mere seconds. It was this terrifying knowledge that helped Norden Montong set his chilling plan into motion. Back in 2008, the 32-year-old jumped into the tiger enclosure at Singapore Zoo as zoo visitors screamed in horror. What followed was the stuff of nightmares, and it ended in death. It was November 13, 2008, and the weather in Singapore was dreary. It was a cold day. Small, light drops of rain were falling down, slowly but surely drenching everything and everyone who failed to take cover. With the weather so bleak, there weren't too many visitors at Singapore Zoo. The day was rather slow. Not to mention it was a Thursday, a weekday. Still, there were a few people who didn't let a little rain ruin their fun. Groups of tourists, as well as locals, strolled around, enjoying their time, pointing and marveling at different animals. Once known as Singapore Zoological Gardens, or Mandai Zoo, Singapore Zoo opened in 1973. Its 69 acres house about 315 species of animals, many of which are considered endangered species. The zoo is quite popular. Over 2 million tourists from all around the world visit it every year. Like many other establishments this large, Singapore Zoo also invests in education and conservation processes. Over the years, the zoo has won numerous awards and the recognition of some of the world's best-known conservationists. Steve Irwin, for example, greatly admired Singapore Zoo and their efforts to protect wildlife and help it flourish. A zoo is normally a happy place, moral questions aside. But not everyone was happy on that Thursday, November 13, 2008. One of the zoo's employees was struggling, though nobody knows why and how exactly. Norden Montong was 32 years old. He came from Malaysia and had been working at Singapore Zoo for more than 4 months. He was a contract cleaner. At that point, Montong had been working at the zoo's chimpanzee enclosure since June. There was nothing off about Montong, at least not to most of the other employees of the Singapore Zoo. That morning, zoo visitors and staff alike witnessed Norden Montong exhibiting some concerning behavior. At some point, he approached the crocodile enclosure. The man acted strangely, muttering to himself and walking around in an erratic manner. Soon enough, the Malaysian worker made his way to the tiger enclosure. Inside the enclosure were 3 white Bengal tigers, beautiful animals who always delighted zoo visitors. There were 20 to 30 zoo visitors around the enclosure, all hoping to watch the magnificent creatures lounge around in all their splendor. White Bengal tigers are like no other animal. Their white fur is the direct result of a lack of the pigment pheomelanin. In other words, they lack the pigment that gives Bengal tigers their orange-colored fur. White Bengal tigers are usually larger and heavier than the orange Bengal tigers. Both parents must carry the gene for white coloring in order for a white Bengal tiger to be born. That's why they are quite rare and so revered for their beauty. Many of them are born in captivity, and so were Omar, Winnie, and Jippy, the 3 white tigers inside the enclosure on November 13, 2008. People watched them in awe. No one would have even thought of entering the animal's space and attracting their wrath. But as zoo visitors watched the animals, they saw something else, something that they regarded as exciting, at least at first. There was a man in the enclosure, carrying a pail and a broom in his hands. The man's arms were outstretched, and he was slowly making his way through the moat in the enclosure and toward the tigers. The animals watched the man, their interest now piqued. Still, they never left the huge rocks they were lounging on. Instead, the tigers waited. If any of the zoo visitors had any concerns, they tried to shrug them off. The man was so calm as he made his way toward the animals. He had to be a zookeeper who was familiar with the animals. Even when the man started shouting at the tiger, Visitors thought that all of it was planned. Yes, it surely was a special show. The man had to know what he was doing. Except this wasn't true at all. The man was none other than Norden Montong. He wasn't a zookeeper, and there was no special show. Instead, people were witnessing something far more sinister. Montong had somehow managed to get past all the security measures around the enclosures, past the walls, past the wire, past the moat, and he was now approaching the massive white tigers. One of the tigers sprinted towards the water to investigate. Montong then emerged from the water, still carrying the pail and the broom. He began shouting at the animals and waving his arms, as if to appear larger and to provoke the animals. The visitors watched, still believing it was all a show. But then the tiger lifted his paw and swiped at Montong. People watched in horror, and then they began screaming. Meanwhile, Montong was quickly knocked to the ground by the now angry animal. The tiger bit down hard into the back of Montong's neck before tossing him around as if the man was nothing but a rag doll. Another tiger approached, undeterred by the public screams. Some people tried to scare the tigers away. Others shouted at Montong to get in the water and swim to safety. Suddenly, someone threw an umbrella at one of the tigers. It was all in vain. The attack went on and on and on. Meanwhile, Norden Montong curled into a ball on the stone ledge. He put the pail on his head, as if to separate himself from the outside world. The tigers couldn't care less. They circled and sniffed him before swiping at the man repeatedly, massive paws intent on hurting. "If you want to kill me, go ahead. Forgive me. God is almighty," the man said over and over again in his mother tongue, Malay. The man was at the tiger's mercy, but these creatures aren't exactly known for being merciful. The two tigers continued their attack, while the third watched from afar. Meanwhile, several zookeepers tried to get the animals to stop. One zookeeper tried to get the animals' attention by using a long stick to hit the water. Others threw broomsticks and dustbin covers at the tigers. Two zookeepers had rifles, but they didn't use them. The attack lasted for several more minutes, during which the white Bengal tigers bit the man's back multiple times. At some point, Norden Montong stopped moving. It wasn't until staff opened the tiger's feeding area that the animals walked away from the man. When the animals entered the feeding area, the zookeepers closed the door, separating it from the rest of the enclosure. 4 of the zoo's vets rushed to give Montong first aid. A Singapore Civil Defense Force ambulance arrived at 12:34 p.m. Norden Montong was pronounced dead 10 minutes later. The incident was ruled a suicide by the state coroner in 2009. Even more, it was revealed that Montong had suffered 90 external injuries, as well as numerous other internal injuries. The white tiger exhibit at Singapore Zoo opened 5 days after the attack. The enclosure was deemed safe, conforming to international safety guidelines imposed by the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. Authorities never found the reason Norden Montong chose to end his life in this excessively cruel and unusual manner.